Hey everybody, we are going to get started with ethics today. I want to talk just a little bit about how um, ethical issues in healthcare happen all the time, and we have to be very careful about in the healthcare world about not crossing ethical boundaries. And each practice has their own set of ethics, whether it's nursing, medical assistant, doctors, pharmacists, pharmacy technicians. They all kind of fall under they all have different specific ethical codes, but we all do have a set of ethics that we go by. That's for hospitals. I mean, every part of the medical practice, there's a set of ethics for you, and every specialty as well. And ethics basically just keep us practicing and doing what's best for our patients. As we talk about ethics, you may think of a lot about morals, because sometimes older people or people will talk about other people's morals. Morals are basically individual to you as a person. They may be related to your religious beliefs. They may be related to family belief. They may be related to. They may be cultural. They may be generational. But morals are specific to a person, where ethics have a basis that is more scientific. They really are they really do have scientific evidence. There's groups that have worked together to make sure the ethical values and the ethical codes for whatever practice that you're in are truly being utilized, and covering a whole population, not just one small group. The definition of ethics is the study of right and wrong based on moral law. So it has law basis, moral basis, but also it's a study. So it's a system of moral principles and standards governing conduct. It centers around respect and the need to do the right for other people. And we'll talk about some of those ethical codes. But remember that ethics is a scientific study. It's the study of right and wrong. It's not just what I believe. It's a study of what groups of people believe. Ethics are based on moral values formed through the influence of family, culture, and society. So that's how ethical, whether it's medical or psychological or whatever kind of ethical code that you have, business ethics, they all are based around and formed based on influences from society, from culture, and from your family. Ethics is basically the behavior that's expected for everyone. And as you can see in that Venn diagram, they overlap. Ethics and law overlap. Ethics and moral. So you have ethical morals, ethical law, and ethical morals and ethical law. They all have some overlap. And sometimes ethics are a higher standard than law. Sometimes our morals may be a higher standard than what the ethics of our profession is. But I can tell you this, when you read the ethics for anywhere you want to go to work for, no matter what kind of business it is, be sure you can live with their ethical values. If you can't, or live with or live up to their ethical values. If you can't, go to work somewhere else because you'll be miserable. Ethics and professional integrity is dependent on ethical behavior. So it's not just my integrity as a professional, as a nurse. It also, the way I behave, it can make other nurses look bad. It could make the place I work look bad. So healthcare workers, we have to understand that our ethical responsibilities, our limitations, our scope of practice, and the implication of the actions that we do. They're not just what we do while we're at work. We are looked at to be ethical at all times and to behave in an ethical manner, whether we're working or not. And that's just an expectation. So there's a code of ethics for all healthcare workers. And the primary goal is so that we have an optimal level of wellness to preserve life. and to provide a peaceful death when necessary. So basically, our code of ethics is do what's right for the patient in a lawful and respectful way. So we want people to teach people how to have optimal health and wellness. What can we do once they have an illness to prolong or preserve or give them optimal life? And then when it is at the end of someone's life, how do we allow them to pass away with dignity? That's pretty much what the code of ethics for a healthcare worker is. I would definitely remember that and the definition of ethics. We have to respect others' beliefs and cultural values. That sometimes can be hard for some people. You have to just understand that people are different, and what I think is right is not necessarily, or what I believe is morally right. It may not be what other people believe, and I have to respect that. I may have one kind of faith, and other people's can have other types of faith, or maybe they have rituals they perform that maybe I don't. That's not relevant for me as the healthcare worker. I have to respect my patients' cultural beliefs, their religious beliefs, and their values, and I can't push my own onto them. That's part of the code of ethics of a healthcare worker, is respecting other people's beliefs and their cultural values. Another code of ethics would be to provide adequate and continuous care for all customers. We can't be biased. We have to be just when it comes to providing care for our patients. It can't matter what's wrong with them, or how they're injured, or what race they are, gender, or age, or what the nature of the illness is, how they got it. We still have to take care of people. We can't refuse to care for people because maybe they have a lifestyle we don't agree with, or maybe they have an illness that is contagious. We just take care of ourselves and protect ourselves by using personal protective equipment, and then we continue to take care of that person. We don't refuse care to people just because they're a little different than we are. Some standard behaviors that we have to be able to exhibit as a healthcare worker. These are just the minimum standards that you have to be able to provide as a healthcare worker. And some of those are those professional qualities we already talked about. Having confidentiality, not talking about patients with anyone except people directly related in their care. That means you don't go home and talk about them. You don't talk about patients in the hall. You don't talk about patients out loud with your neighbor that's on the same pod, or maybe a nurse on the other floor, unless they're taking over care for that patient. You just don't talk about patients especially with personal health information. That would be like name, date of birth, specific illness, Social Security number, health insurance. Those are things that we have to keep confidential. We have to be accurate. We have to do our job to the best of our ability. We have to be diligent in the way we do our work and meticulous in the way we do our work. We have to be honest, and that includes reporting ourselves when we make a mistake so that mistake hopefully can be fixed. And we have to be dependable because patients depend on us. Patients depend on us, family members depend on us, and our coworkers depend on us. If you guys are part of a team, any kind of team, band, if you're part of football, if you're part of cheer, if you're part of basketball, softball, baseball, cross country, if you're part of any kind of team, track, golf, if you're part of any kind of team, your teammates depend on you to do what you're supposed to do. Be there when you say you're going to be there. Back them up when they need you to back them up. And it's no different in healthcare. One person cannot provide all the care one patient needs. It's a team effort. And so we have to be available, and not only do we have to be dependable to our team, we have to be dependable to our patient, which means if I say I'm going to call them back tomorrow, I've got to call them back tomorrow. We just have to be real dependable. What do we do when we come into ethical dilemmas? Well, we have to do what's most right. And if we don't know, we have to go find out what's the most right. We can't, we have to choose the right path. We just do. It's part of what we do. So what are some examples of this? Let's talk about some examples. So assisted suicides or assisted deaths, euthanasia. when people are terminally ill, or when they are at a certain stage of life. We have to think about, what do we take an oath to do? Taking care of HIV and AIDS patients, patients with hepatitis C, patients that have bloodborne illness, bloodborne pathogens. We have to think about their rights to be cared for, and to be cared for with respect. To me, it's never an ethical dilemma, because I know how to protect myself from getting HIV and AIDS. I know that I would just wear my gloves when I draw blood, or when I'm doing wound care on someone with HIV, AIDS, or hepatitis, and I'm okay. You would never refuse care to someone like that. Um, Abortion, and research on aborted fetuses. Those are ethical dilemmas that are dealt with every day in the court system. Discontinuing life support, at what point, if a patient has wished for that, for their family not to put them on life support, at what point do we say, okay, this is what the patient wishes? So, at what point do we discontinue life support? We have to be sure that our religious beliefs and our religious rights don't impact our patients if they're not the same. And here's one that you will run into a lot as a healthcare worker, is financial issues. People needing care that they can't necessarily pay for. They don't have insurance. We have to do what's right for the patient. And so, be sure you look at where you're working in terms for, at what point do they stop providing care for a patient who can't afford it? What do they do? And transplant recipients. So there's some very, very strict guidelines with transplant recipients, because you have to think about it this way. Maybe Mary Jo over here has, millions of dollars and can pay cash for her hospital stay, for her organ, and all of her care. And maybe a patient who has the same condition, but maybe a little further up on the scale and are closer to the top of the list to get their transplant, maybe they have a state insurance that doesn't pay quite as well. We have to be sure as healthcare workers that money that we're giving it to the patient that needs it the most, not the patient who can afford it the most. We have to be sure, that those aren't issues, by following very strict guidelines, that those kind of things are taken care of like they should be. Some other ethical issues would be selling organs, using the use of illegal substances, research on animals, research on humans, stem cell research, and cloning. Those are things that we have to determine. They're going to come up more. They're going to come up more and more and more in your lifetime, especially the cloning and the stem cell research, and human research. Those are going to be things. Right now there are very strict guidelines on animal and on human research, but that could change with things such as stem cell and cloning. So, now who's to say they couldn't clone me just to do research on me because I have some kind of weird genetic thing going on? So, we have to think about those things. Is it ethical to sell organs? When, like for me, I'm sorry guys, let me go back. I'm an organ donor. And as an organ donor, well, hopefully I can get this to work, because it's acting up. Hang on. Sorry, guys. My internet's being, okay, there we go. So, we have to be sure that we understand what's going on. All right, guys. Let's see. Ethical guidelines for national organizations vary. So that would be like the American Medical Association, the American Association of Medical Assistants, the Nurse Practice Act. All of those different things, they have very specific ethical guidelines, and they vary. But they all have the same basic principle: to promote health, to preserve life, and to preserve dignity at the end of life. So that ethical code, even though they may vary across every kind of healthcare service, they all have the same intent. That intent is to promote health and wellness, to provide comfort and preserve life as much as possible. And when someone must die, let them die peacefully and with dignity. So those are things that all areas of healthcare, we all strive to be sure that we provide. We want patients to be treated equally. We don't want there to be any prejudice related to the way we treat people, whether it's race, nationality, gender, economic status, religious status, their social status. None of that should matter when we take care of the patient. We should just be taking care of that individual. Also, we want to make sure that we are competent and we are able to provide care, that we continue our education so we know what's on the forefront, what's the most appropriate way to care for the patient. So those are the things that are most important when we talk about ethics of a patient. I'm going to give, so you guys did an ethical, y'all did an ethics case study. So I want you to think about that case study and look at the ethical guidelines that every healthcare provider should adhere to. Now, that's going to be it over ethics. We're going to talk about law next, and then you guys will have a test over professionalism, ethics, and law. You're going to have a little bit of a writing assignment, and then you'll upload it to this particular assignment, you'll upload it to this whole assignment, and then that will be the end. That'll kind of wrap all that up. Okay. All right, you guys have a great day.